In this video, I'm going to show you 4 design applications on how I use Morpholio trace in my everyday work as a designer for floor plans, interior elevations, construction administrations, and axometric 3D studies. In the description below, you can download the native format Morpholio trace files and open up in your own iPad and get a better sense of the design sequence by looking at my layer makeup. By the way, if you are interested in seeing more of my design process on iPad, I have a free 3-part workshop that you can sign up for today. The workshop are perfect if you are considering moving to a digital workflow that will save you time, allow you to work smarter and faster, and free you from a traditional office environment. I'll show you real-world examples with different applications on how I use my iPad for architectural and interior design work. You can click this link above or find it in the video description below. The first project that we're going to look at is a 20,000 square foot house. And this is much larger than the typical projects that I work on, which is about 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. So this is the as-built floor plan of the entire house on the first floor. Now, if I created a typical trace layer on this entire floor plan, you're not going to have very good high quality line weight. For example, I just created a layer on top of this floor plan. If I start drawing, you can see right away that this line weight is not going to look very crisp. And this is inherently a software limitation. On this entire as-built floor plan, you'll see that I've started to first annotate for different kind of direction. And on top of this is what I want to show you, and that will create a better line weight and line quality when you export the drawing. So you see that this is a new trace layer that I created by zooming in to the area where I want to show options and remodels. Because this house, as big as it is, not everywhere is going to receive the remodel. The areas that are going to have new design is limited to this master bedroom area and also in this kitchen area where there's going to be some expansion. So instead of creating a new layer on the entire drawing, what I'm going to focus on is really the master bedroom area. So that's why by creating this new trace layer on here, you can get a much higher quality line weight when you zoom in on this area. So in this master bedroom, these are the options that I ended up showing to the client initially. You'll also see that above this layer, there are options for the kitchen, which is also a zoomed in version on this part of the house, and it's not the whole house. So really your choice to make this a higher quality drawing is to really create a closer look of the canvas, and when you export that, that's going to give you a higher quality line weight. So here are a couple more options for the plans, and all this is done with a calibrated drawing with a super scale ruler, and those are just inherent features that if you are using Morpholio for the first time, these are really fantastic things that you should be capitalizing on. So here are a couple more layers just to show you a more developed design as we moved further into the design process. And here are a couple more design ideas, probably in the second or third meeting. Here's also another area for a artist workshop that we were looking at, and here are a couple of design options for that as well. So you can see that this can become a very iterative process as long as you're managing your layer properly, so you can turn things on and off, and you can export things depending on what layers are turned on. So this is great for exporting different options. So in this example, I want to show you how powerful it is to use trace with calibrated drawing, scale with a super scale ruler to go through a design process and do these kind of conceptual sketches very quick, very easily, without needing to use a physical paper and a scale. This case study is linked in the description below in case you want to grab a copy and go through these layer structure yourself. Having the drawing calibrated and the super scale turned on makes drawing to precision incredibly easy. So you can see everything in here is drawn to scale, and you can rotate the super scale ruler, and this is going to zoom in and zoom out, and it's going to calibrate according to the size you have this drawing on the canvas. So very quickly, if I wanted to find out the length of this very wide opening for a series of nano doors, I can see that this is about a 20-foot opening. So if I wanted to annotate that directly on the drawing, that's going to be very easy. You can also see that there are some dimension annotated for counter in the kitchen. So this tool makes space planning very, very quick and intuitive. Now, I want to show you a different project, and this is my typical workflow for a interior elevation design. So on this very base layer, this is what I blocked out as interior elevations in AutoCAD. So with a simple floor plan, you can block out these different areas with elevation tag. And they're not designed at this point, but it is helpful to understand where the doors, the height of the counter, and some basic massing in here. And the idea is very similar to working on real paper. Is you're gonna create a layer with opacity turned on, and you're going to brainstorm and draw your ideas and design on top of this. So I'm gonna turn on this next layer, and this next layer is gonna show you some of the design thinking. These are not polished drawings, but you can already start to see the kind of alignments from the floor plan to the elevation, and some of the very just conceptual ideas about how this translates on the inside. So this can take on many layers depending on how much time you have. If I turn these off, you'll have a better sense of the finished drawing. So these drawings can ultimately be exported into InDesign or linked to InDesign, or in my other tutorial, I'll show you how to bring this into Procreate for coloring, because the tools in Procreate is just much more robust, and I can create a sort of a more artistic touches without using the coloring tools in Morpholio Trace. Now, this is just for the kitchen. I also have a different sheet for other spaces in the room. In a very similar manner, block out these different interior elevations first, and then draw your ideas on top. And this approach I've used on many projects and has been proven very effective at communicating these earlier design aspirations. So you can pair them with Pinterest images or other boards, and with color they actually communicate much more than if you just show them in a sort of an AutoCAD or hardline setting. So if I zoom in on any of these elevations, you can start to see that they're not just sketches and doodles. These are actually done with a lot of thought and precision, and this is all possible with the super scale ruler. Many of you know that I am a huge fan of my iPad, and I've tried to integrate most aspect of my design process using an iPad, and this includes construction administration as well. So in our office, we try to load everything on the iPad and bring the iPad with us, as opposed to bringing physical printout of the drawing set. So the drawings are already preloaded on Morpholio Trace. If not, they also live on Dropbox, where we have offline access when we don't have internet on site. So this is an example of really me having the iPad in one hand and the pencil in the other hand, and walking through the site on a weekly basis and start to make these notes and red lines that most of you are familiar with. So I'm using each layer as a save the date. So on this particular date, you'll see that I have made these notes. On a different date, if I turn them on, other notes are being made on that particular date. So at the end of the day, you can either export the drawing as a sort of a time capsule to save for that date in the CA folder, or you could go home on your computer and you can write a more detailed notes of what's going on these red lines. But on the side, you can imagine, as long as you have this drawing loaded in, you can be very precise because you can zoom in and out, and you can measure things, and you can annotate in ways that I just wasn't able to annotate with physical paper, because the real constraint of the paper is just going to be much smaller. This is an electrical floor plan, and also a good example of seeing how the RCP and the electrical plan is designed. And then when you go on site, you start to notice these real constraints and conditions where the lighting fixtures that you have laid out previously may not make sense. A lot of times this is going to be true in residential design, where you're just going to be making a lot of field changes as you walk through the site. So it's important to really capture these changes as much as you can without a lot of trouble. So again, I hope you can see how valuable this is to be able to making these kind of changes directly on the iPad with the measuring tool and document as you move ahead. And this is also possible with elevations as well. So in this example, we're looking at a slightly different ratio of the wood slats where it's lower to where it was originally. And instead of modeling this or doing this on CAD, I quickly drew this in elevation, and I can visualize this in a 2D setting before making a more informed decision. This is also a good example of the things that you've laid out and the actual conditions on site where it doesn't really match up, or if there is a change in appliance or sizing, you can do this very quickly and then ultimately correct it on the computer when you need to, or send it to the cabinet maker and they can make these corrections without you actually having to do them on CAD. So if you can live with this kind of red line without going in CAD and replot, that could save you tremendous amount of time. Our last example is the bathroom elevations. So the bathroom we design are going to have a lot of minor changes, and these are all captured with the red lines on site. Now, this last example is more of a design project that I worked on for the bathroom that I previously showed you. So in this kind of a example, we didn't have a 3D model of the bathroom. We did have a plan, but that plan only showed one option. And we wanted to just take a look at different ways to rearrange this bathroom before investing the time in interior elevation or doing a 3D model. So on this third floor plan, you'll see this is the area where I'm gonna create a 3D model. And what I did was to single out the bathroom, and I kind of rotated on a 45 degree because I knew I wanted to experiment looking at this bathroom in a bird's eye view. So it's really easy to rotate it 45 degrees in Morpholio Trace. And then with your triangular ruler tool, you can actually adjust the rotation of this ruler. So that's going to be done with this control and slider right here. So I think I used the 45-degree angle, and this is going to allow you to draw and to extrude your lines from a plan view into a 45-degree angle. So you can see that these three examples are really done with this triangular ruler by extruding the plan up a certain distance and showing the 3D in this way. And you can imagine that I could do this within an hour, but to do a similar example with 3D or other ways to show this, that could take a lot longer. So this was quite effective in showing three options. Ultimately, the client resonated more with this option, and we took this into 3D and we made more study models based on this layout. But you can see that the overarching concept can be easily communicated with just sketches alone, and this is quite effective to do if you know what you're doing. Hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear which one of these examples might most help you in your role as an architect and interior designer.